Hello, this is Paul Dunham, and welcome back to the channel. The proliferation of 3D design and printing is becoming a boon to those of us seeking upgrades to our plastic kits. The advances in this technology have made it easier than ever for talented designers to share their work with those of us less inclined to spend our time at computer screens and troubleshooting printers. Doogs Studios provides a variety of aircraft, armor, and automotive upgrades as both STL downloads and physical resin prints. In this review, I use his Sherman T51 Workable Tracks and his Sherman Track Duckbills, both in 1/35 scale. These 3D printed resin tracks offer several advantages over the tracks that typically come in armor kits. These tracks do not have the gravity-defying springiness of vinyl tracks. Unlike injected molded tracks, there are no mold parting seam lines to clean up. Unlike link and length style tracks, these tracks can conform to uneven ground or be used off of the vehicle for stowage or dioramas. Although there are lots of parts to assemble to make these tracks, there are a lot fewer parts than injected molded individual link tracks. The T51 track parts come in snap containers. The parts containers, jigs, and assembly tools come in a printed parts organizer packed in a cardboard box. The printed parts organizer can serve as a glue stand and tool organizer. Included in the set are assembly instructions, track links, female end connectors, male end connectors with integrated track pins, an assembly jig for holding the track links at the correct spacing, a straight edge for holding the track links in the jig, a tool for holding individual end connectors, and a jig for holding end connectors at the correct spacing. The track links have a realistically worn outer surface. I don't know if the wear patterns are unique on each pad, but there is certainly enough variety that no one is likely to notice duplicates. The outer surfaces of the end connectors have very fine detail, with visible nut and bolt detail. One end of each track link and the inner surface of the female end connectors have small nubs where the printing supports were attached. These nubs can be scraped off easily with a knife. The jig for holding the track links in the correct spacing is very useful while adding the pins and end connectors. The tolerances for the pin to link connections are small, and a little bit of variation in the size of the parts can result in some pins being a very tight fit into the links. Rather than forcing these parts together, I found it useful to run a 35,000th drill bit through the links to ensure that the pins go in easily. When gluing the female end connectors to the pins, I found it helpful to have a block supporting the opposite side of the track to ensure that the end connectors seated all the way. The instructions recommend using PVA glue for assembly. I found that I could use CA glue, but I needed to be careful not to glue the end connectors to the links. During assembly, I found that it was easier to use tweezers than the end connector tool or jig. The instructions give examples of the typical track lengths for a variety of vehicles with Sherman-type suspensions. Unless something was broken, Sherman tracks had very little sag between the return rollers. Although your tracks need to be tight, be careful not to over-tension your tracks during final assembly. The material around the sockets in the female end connectors is very thin and is easy to break. There are enough extra parts that you can replace broken or lost parts and still have some left over for stowage. The link jig holds 10 track links at a time, which makes keeping track of your progress simple. I test fit these tracks to drive sprockets from Asuka, Mang, Dragon, Tacom, Academy, and Tamiya. The only fit problem I found was with Tamiya drive sprockets with star-shaped holes from kits with tooling dating back to 1984. These drive sprockets are slightly narrower than all the others. If you add some 20,000th shims between the parts before gluing them together, they will fit the tracks. Many Shermans used end connectors with extensions, duckbills, welded on to reduce ground pressure on soft ground. Doogs Studios makes two styles of duckbill end connectors. These connectors are purchased separately from the track sets and are meant to replace the female end connectors in the track sets. The duckbills come in a small printed box with separate compartments for the end connectors and the end connector holding tool. The outer surfaces of the end connectors have very fine detail, including convincing weld beads where the duckbills are attached. The inner surfaces of the end connectors need cleanup where the print supports were attached. Some connectors had extra chunks of resin stuck to the inner surface, but these chunks popped off easily with the swipe from a knife. I found that it was easier to use tweezers for assembly than it was to use the end connector tool. There was a lot of friction between the tool and the extended duckbill, and the duckbill tended to get stuck in the tool. These tracks and duckbills are a nice upgrade to Sherman kits. Although there are a lot of parts to assemble, assembly is not difficult, and with the integrated track pins and jigs, the process goes relatively quickly. I look forward to using more Doogs Studio tracks in the future. If you're interested in more reviews and news from IPMS USA, subscribe to this channel and click the bell icon for notifications. There are a lot more kit reviews on the IPMS USA Reviews page. To go there, you can click the link in this video's description. Thanks for watching. See you next time.